the first thing, of course, is the emergence of China as the second sort of great, or even the first great authoritarian power in the world, alongside Russia, means that for the first time in its history, NATO needs to confront two major powers as potential adversaries at the same time. And of course, those of you who know NATO will know that throughout its 70-year plus history, NATO has had the luxury of only one challenger in one place at one time: Soviet Union, Milosevic in the former Yugoslavia, the Taliban after 9/11, Colonel Gaddafi after 2011. And when you've only got one real threat in one place to worry about, you obviously have the luxury of time. You have the luxury of being able to devote all of your intelligence resources to analyzing that one single threat and coming up with a response. But the emergence of China means that for the first time, NATO really has to simultaneously deal with these two immense beasts of the global strategic scene. And that's obviously going to impose some difficult debates between allies like the US or Canada or the global Britain post-Brexit that are looking increasingly to the Indo-Pacific, feeling that China should now have the priority, and allies in Central and Eastern Europe. You think of Poland, the Baltic states, who traditionally have had problems with Russia, and will be quite alarmed if they believe that the cursor of security, of alliance attention, is moving away from them towards China, particularly at the time when they see Putin sort of rattling the saber by deploying over 100,000 troops and 2 tank divisions on the border with Ukraine in recent weeks, trying to push NATO ships out of the Black Sea, and so on and so forth. So it's not going to be easy for NATO to find the right balance between these two focal points. And of course, the second problem is that they're very different. And I'll talk about this tonight. Russia, you could argue, is a declining power, which has a declining asset, oil and gas, but still a sizable military force and the will to use it, particularly within the region. China, of course, is a power, unlike Russia, in all of the key categories of global power today: foreign assistance, propaganda, technology. I'll come to this in just a moment. And so you can't just have a kind of Russia policy and say, hey, that's okay for China as well, one size fits all, or vice versa, a kind of China policy and say, yeah, that's fine. We'll apply that to Russia. They require distinct approaches, which is a second problem. The third big problem that emerges for NATO from the rise of China is that Russia and China are becoming increasingly close. Putin at the Valdai conference, which he hosts every year, openly speculated on a forthcoming official Russia-China alliance. They're conducting joint exercises together. We are going to see soon if China will participate in the Russian exercises Zapad 21 in the Western military districts this year, which is worrying many of the allies. They have conducted joint maritime exercises in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the Baltic Sea, in the Arctic. They've been flying joint patrols very close to Japanese airspace in the Northern Pacific. And recently they announced that they're going to launch a joint space probe to set up a space center, a space research center on the moon. Now, some of you who have a historic perspective like me will say, yes, this was tried in the past with the famous Sino-Soviet alliance of 1950, which only lasted for 6 years until Mao became alarmed at the idea of Khrushchev and the Soviet Union going soft on Stalinism, and he broke up that alliance. At that time, of course, it was the Russians who were the lead and the Chinese who were treated very much as the junior partner. Now, of course, the shoe is on the other foot. It's very much the Chinese that are in the lead and Russia is the junior partner. Whether Putin will accept to play the role of Mao is something that we wait to see. So there are some skeptics who believe that because this thing didn't work in the 50s, it won't work now. I am much more skeptical about that. I think that these two powers, at least in the short term, see every reason to combine against the West in furtherance of their own sort of alliance of the authoritarians. Russia has a massive dependency on China for oil and gas. The more it can sell to China in the 10 years or so, when natural gas and oil are still going to have a market value before the green revolution puts the fossil fuel industry out of business altogether, the more they can sell to China, the more they can keep their own system going. The Chinese still need the Russians for a lot of military technology, particularly aircraft engines and space capabilities and so on. And basically, they just enjoy together poking a finger in the eye of the West. So this alliance may not last forever, but I think it's going to last a lot longer than the 6 years of the Sino-Soviet alliance in the 50s. So in a nutshell, NATO has to worry about Russia, it has to worry about China, but then it has to see how it deals with the combination of this growing rapprochement between these two great powers. So this is going to impose a much greater level of complexity in devising NATO policy to what we've seen in the past.